Hi, my name is Mike Arce, CEO of A Loud Rumor, an organization that helps fitness studios all over the world grow and be more successful. I'm also the host of Top Fitness Business Podcast, the GSD Show, and your host on this podcast as well. And the goal of this podcast is to help you stay informed on some good ideas that your fitness studio can implement to succeed during this pandemic. And today, I'm here with Rocco Fiorentino and Ty Brewster from Kaiser, people that we actually work with for our real estate. And they're here to talk about their expertise on how to negotiate with your landlord, which is a hot topic right now. So Rocco, Ty, welcome to the GSD COVID Updates podcast.
Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you to all the listeners. You know, Ty and I have been on the phones for the last 3 weeks since COVID has gotten its little nickname, and talking to landlords, representing tenants. So we've got a lot to share. And certainly we've gotten a lot of feedback from our tenants that we represent and our landlords that we've been working with. So before we get into what we should ask for and when we should ask, I thought it'd be a good idea to just kind of give the listening audience an idea of the roles that each of us play as landlord and tenant. So I'll start off with the landlord. A landlord is typically, first of all, they're an investor in our success. Without their centers, we wouldn't have a place to conduct our retail business. However, having said that, they're by nature collectors. They collect their rents every month. Mm-hmm. And, also they are excellent negotiators. That's all they do. In our businesses, regardless of what the product or service is, we're in retail. We're not collectors. We don't collect money every month from our tenants. But that doesn't make them bad people, Mike. That means that they've got a job to do, and they look at the contract that's already signed. It's in black and white. We've all agreed to do whatever we're going to do, and tenants have liability. So, now the world has changed, and landlords are now facing a lot of the same challenges that a lot of the tenants are facing. So they've got lenders. You can imagine in any given center, probably 80% of the tenants are calling landlords all at the same time or sending letters from their attorney or from their real estate agent stating we cannot pay our rent for April, May, or June, and we don't know if we're going to have a business when this is all over. So just understand that. Now, as much as you want to understand that and make sure that they are good folks and we negotiate in good faith and we ask for things that are reasonable, just the other day, within 5 minutes, I heard two different things from two different landlords. Publix, who runs supermarkets, is also the manager and owner of a lot of different centers. And they publicly announced that all of their tenants and all the centers that they own, operate, and manage will be given 2 months of rent deferment for April and May. So they made that announcement publicly without any tenant even asking for it. 5 minutes later, I heard from a group called Taubman. Taubman is a regional mall operator, and they operate regional malls around the country. And in their malls have been closed. So the tenant can't even get into the space to do business if they wanted to, or if they were considered, a food business where they could stay open. And they sent out a letter stating to their tenants that unfortunately they've got lenders and bills to pay, and they're not able to accept any rent relief request. So here we are. Publix says you're getting 2 months deferred automatically whether you ask for it or not. And Taubman says, even if you ask for it, I can't give it to you, don't bother. This is how far the spectrum is from one landlord to the other. So with that, maybe I ask Ty to share with you how valuable the tenants are.
Yeah, so it's important. Obviously, we understand what the landlords are going through. It's also important to understand how valuable we are to a landlord. Obviously, we're going to go into a situation here where we're going to be asking the landlords for something. It's important that we understand what kind of leverage that we have and what the value we bring to the table for these landlords. We don't want to get over our skis on it. We don't want to push too much and tell this landlord that without me, you're nothing. We don't want to get cocky about it at all. But it is important that we understand the value that we bring to the table. So when you look at your position, if your landlord is going to look at replacing you, that is an expensive proposition. Obviously, he's already provided you most likely some tenant improvement allowance to build out the space that you're currently in. He probably paid a commission or two out at that time. He also is going to receive your rents every month according to your lease. And if you are not in the space, if he decides, look, I'm not going to work with you at this time, I'm just going to kick you out on April 20th. I mean, I don't know that he could get an eviction court to meet across the country to do that. But let's say that they want to play hardball and they want to do that for us. This landlord's going to have a pretty hard road getting that space replaced. So it's important that we understand as tenants that we do have a lot of value in this transaction, and that we're not going and just begging for something from the landlord that isn't a benefit to him. Obviously, they don't like the fact that we're struggling to pay rents. That's not what a landlord likes to hear. But in this situation, that's just the reality of where everybody is in the marketplace. And unlike any other downturns that I've experienced in the past, and I've been through a number of them, this is the first one I've seen that really is not limited to any sectors of the economy. It really is hitting in every sector: restaurants, fitness, retail, all around, all across the boards. Landlords are hearing from their tenants that they are struggling.
So what do you like? What's the best approach? Let's say you're my landlord. Okay, I'm the tenant. What's the best way to go about it? Is it an email? Is it a phone call? Is it definitely not going up in person, right? Because that's the whole idea, is we're not doing that right now. So what would you recommend me do if I was in a situation? I think I've got mine covered right now already. I think my team did a good job of that, but email, phone call, text, what would you say?
We are suggesting all of those things. I mean, the key.
Which one's the best one to connect on? I know you do all of them. If you can't get a hold of them, you pick one, but if I was able to make a connection right away, what would be the best way, phone call or email?
I believe it's a phone call. I'm having the best success when I am calling landlords and getting them on the phone and being able to communicate voice to voice with them and overcome those concerns. What you're going to experience is the landlord's going to be able to say, or the landlord agent's going to say to you, well, you have this, you have that, you have this. If you're on the phone with them, you can overcome those objections as they're going through those issues.
I got an idea, because you got two of you here. This is going to be the best way to explain this, I think. So both of you understand this pretty well, right? I'm assuming both Rocco and Ty understand what's going on pretty well and what people are dealing with. Could I see a role play example? Yeah, I would love to see a role play example. Rocco, you're the landlord, where you're, obviously you don't want to lose a tenant. Your best situation is this tenant pays you. And Ty, you're the tenant that's wanted to work this deal where you can get, what are you going to work? What are you looking to work? 2 months, 3 months, 6 months?
Yeah. So let's do this, Mike, because Ty's been on the phone with landlords, and I'm actually a really, really nice guy. So I'm going to play the tenant.
You're the tenant. Okay, so you're the tenant, Rocco.
So, yeah, and Ty's going to be the landlord because he's heard it all. And before I share with you what I would ask for with the landlord, I want to make sure that every one of the listeners know that the way you ask is even more important than what you ask for. So you can't dig your heels in and have an attitude and call the landlord and say, hey, by the way, if you don't work with me, I'm out of here. You've shut down all negotiations. So typically, I would call the landlord. You asked the question before. If you can't get them on the phone, if no one is in their office, I would certainly make sure that I sent a letter, and if I could get it certified, I would do that. And all you want to do is say, you realize that all of us are closed in the center, or my particular business is closed. I'd like to speak with you about rent relief or rent deferral. What I've been asking for, and we can role play a little bit, is at least 3 months of deferred rent. Why? We don't know when this thing is ending. Every week I say it's going to be one more week and it's over, but now I just heard California is going to be closed till the 15th. So Ty, if I ring your phone, I'm going to say, Ty, Mr. Landlord, I am your wonderful, handsome tenant down in the beautiful center that you have. And as you know, my business is closed. My employees are all laid off and furloughed. And I'd like to ask you for rent relief for April, May, and June. Can you help?
Let me tell you, look, I'm feeling the pain too. I understand you guys are struggling, but we've got bills to pay, right? I mean, I've called my mortgage company. My mortgage company they're not giving me a break here. I really have to have that April rent payment
Oh, the tie
You
freeze
give me
up?
that April rent payment plus the triple nets, the cans and everything. And then once I get that, then let's have another conversation.
Yep, but I'm not sure I can do that, and that'd be nice to kick that can down the road. But basically, what you're saying to me is, pay me now, and I'm not sure I can do anything moving forward. Is there anything you can do? I mean, you recognize you're a consumer. You went to the grocery store to get groceries for your family, and when you went to the grocery store, didn't you pass every center that was just totally empty? So, what is it we can do to work together? I aspire to be the best tenant in your center for a long time. How can you help me right now?
Well, look, I understand what you're going through, but look, you've got this. What is this new loan? I heard the government's giving out money to tenants all over town. This PPP. Have you guys applied for that PPP? I know that you can use that for your rent. Why don't you just borrow that money, pay me, and then you can get that PPP loan, and everything gets paid off, and you don't need to worry about it.
As you know, the devil's in the details, right? So we're working with the government-backed loan. The PPP is the payroll protection plan. We applied directly to our lender, our bank, and we've given them all the information. That was 2 weeks ago. We're still waiting for approval. Once we get approval, they tell us it's in 10 days. Now, what I could do is promise you that if we are able to get the PPP funds, we're certainly happy to call you and say, let's work this out. I'm not trying to do anything other than survive. So if you can work with me through April and May and even June, I promise you we will be a tenant in good standing and work with you. But right now, I don't have any money to pay you. We have zero revenue coming in.
Okay, look, I know you got insurance. You clearly have reached out to your insurance agent. You're getting this business interruption insurance. Why don't you just pay us out of the proceeds of the business interruption insurance? You can pay us now, right? Get that check to me because, look, I've got to make these payments. You get that check to me. When the insurance company is going to cover all of this. You have no troubles.
You know, the good news is what I'm going to tell you is I know you're going to know it's true because you are additional insured on my policy. That's mandated with every tenant. So you have my policy in your office, and there's probably enough language in there that allows the insurance company to deny any of the coronavirus claims. I haven't heard of one. We did call our agent, by the way, and he said, get in line. This is going to be a long time down the road in court. It'll be 5 years before anybody recognizes whether the insurance company can or can't deny it. But for your own sake, please take a look at the policy. It's in your office. And if you think we can fight it together because you're additional insured on there, I'm happy to go side by side with you with that.
Okay. All right. I get where you're at. I understand you're in a tough position. Here's an enormous list of requirements that I have. I'm going to ask you to send me your personal tax returns for the last 2 years. Why don't you get me your business tax returns for the last 2 years? I want to see your business bank accounts over the last 24 months. If you can get me your personal bank accounts for the last 24 months. And then I'm going to look at, we want to see a plan that you put together to show how you're going to make this business work when you're not open and operating for business. Can you get all that put together for me?
Would you be willing to pause my rent until I got my accountant to get all that together for you?
I really need to have that April rent. So
let me ask you a question. On March 31st, I was a tenant in good standing. Everything was paid up to date. On April 1st, I'm a tenant that can't pay us rent. Not much has changed in all the information you just asked for. And you're a consumer. I know you know this isn't just my retail brand that's struggling. This is a national, frankly, an international epidemic. So you realize and recognize other than department stores supermarkets or manufacturers that are making masks, everyone else is pretty much out of business. So what good would all that do you? I mean, I'm sure you're going to see zero revenue because we're physically closed. So what information would that provide you, and what decision would you be able to make from that other than kind of wasting our time?
You make a fine point, Rocco. I bet you're a pretty good talker. I'll tell you what. Why don't you put that in writing, send it over to me, and we'll take a look at it. I'll run it through my superiors.
Tell you what we'll do, since we're working towards the center point here. If I can get 3 months of deferred rent, I'm not asking you to waive it. I'm asking you to defer it. And if you can stretch that out, whatever that amount is, I think my rent is $5,000 a month. So I'm going to defer $15,000. Let's take the remainder of the lease and tack it on to those months down the road, because once we open, I believe we're going to be really strong again. And again, I aspire to be an amazing tenant and be there so long that we can renew our lease. So if you can do that and stretch me out to the end of my lease, that would absolutely help me, and I would greatly appreciate it. Can I send you an email stating that?
Maybe we could even just tack 3 months on the end of the lease, and you guys just extend your lease for a couple of months.
I would be happy to do that.
We could probably make that work.
Okay, great. Now, before we get off of it, let's let you play the landlord who wants me to extend my lease in order to give me a few months of free rent.
Well, here's
that
what
has
we're
happened.
doing, Rocco. You've got this option, and it's only at a 28% increase over your current rent. How about why don't you take this option? I'll give you the 3 months. I won't charge you for those 3 months. We're going to abate that rent completely. But you take this option at the increase that we've got in there, and you give me 5 more years of term. I think that's a great deal for you.
Yeah, the only problem is I don't know that either one of us understand what the market will look like. I don't know if rents across the country over the next 5 years are going to drop by 10% or go up by 15%. I suspect not all businesses will survive. That's just an assumption. And with that, I suspect there'll be a little more opportunity in real estate, and I suspect that the rents will either stay flat or be slightly lower. So again, you're asking me to think about the next 5 years. I'm trying to survive the next 90 days. So if you can just work with me on 90 days, I guarantee you I'm going to be first in line to want to renew that lease when it's time. And I think you'll be a fair landlord and work with me based on what the market is. Is that okay?
I think we've got a deal.
All righty. There you go, Mike.
That was amazing. I couldn't have done it better. I mean, great.
Well, I will say that I have talked to 124 landlords today for
Just
thousands.
Yeah.
So it is certainly not the first time I've been through this.
That's awesome. So what else could somebody face outside of that? Like, what else do you think somebody could deal with? Could it get tougher than that?
Oh yeah. Again, what we're seeing in a lot of cases is these folks, look, we're dealing with a collector, right? And if anyone's been, 3 hours late on their AT&T bill,
Mm-hmm.
you know how that is. I mean, these folks are just relentless. And so, it's not uncommon that somebody will put their foot down on something. Of course, I was letting it go, right? But it's very common that in this conversation, they're going to say, provide us all this documentation. And I'm going to say, well, I don't have time to provide you all this documentation. It's a waste of time. And they're going to say, it doesn't matter. It's not my decision. It's, the guy above me and blah, blah, blah. So you're going to hear a lot of that. This was obviously an example, but it's not like that. I mean, it's unusual that I'll get through a 20-minute conversation like that and we'll get to a conclusion. Usually it's, I don't want to commit to something. I'm going to hedge my bets. Send that to me. Okay, that sounds okay, but I don't know what, my boss Tony's going to say. And let me.
So what you're saying,
usually you're not.
What you guys just role played in a 10-minute, 15-minute period is essentially something that may happen over several phone calls.
That is correct. Yes.
Several email chains.
Yes. And what I would say is I would try personally. I'm doing this again. I'm doing this a lot. Rocco's doing this a lot. I would take this out of email as much as possible because when I'm having a conversation with Rocco and he's overcoming those concerns, I'm talking to a person that has emotion and I'm building a personal relationship with that person.
So if they email, I can reply back with, hey, you know what? I'd really rather have this conversation in person. I like communicating with you. You've always been a fair person to talk with. I feel more comfortable having this conversation, over the phone so that we don't misinterpret each other.
Mike, you asked earlier, what you do, whether you do it in writing or a phone call. Communicate early, communicate in writing, certainly, even if it's after the phone call. And most importantly, communicate reasonably. So that means you've got to be transparent when you speak to the landlord and always be able to utilize your track record. So for example, for those listeners out there that have been great tenants pay your rent every month on time. You never have to have the landlord send you a letter or put you in default or threaten to kick you out. I think the best thing to do is say, I can certainly send you some information, but I think for the last 3.5 years, I've made my rent payments on the first of every month or before every time. So I don't know whatever I send you is going to really matter to you in terms of information. I'm just trying to survive here. You've got to be genuine and try to get the emotion out of it, especially if it's starting to elevate, because you want to keep the conversation open. You never want to shut that door. You cannot have the landlord say, too bad, call my attorney. Once that happens, here's what goes on. You've got to hire an attorney, they've got to hire an attorney, and both of you are looking to save money. Last thing you want to do is hire 2 more people that are $500 an hour. That makes no sense at all. And for the landlord, I'd say, well, I don't know where you're going to go with the attorney. All the eviction courts are closed and will be closed, and no judge in the land is going to give you the opportunity to evict me. Now, if the tenant's been late the last 7 months and you have to struggle to get the payment every month, why bother? He's probably just going to go out of business anyway. But utilize your great track record if you can. Make sure that you take a look at everything positive about you as a tenant. I advertise, I keep a clean unit, I always pay the rent on time. I'm a model tenant. I'd like to continue to be a model tenant if you'll allow me. Make sense, Mike?
Yeah, 100%. When you say keep the emotion out of it, what you really mean is more like don't get hot. Don't
let it elevate.
Yeah, because it's going to be emotional.
Look, this is my business. I don't want to fail here. This is how my family makes a living. This is a personal thing to me. The emotion that you want to avoid is you're an idiot. You're a greedy landlord. Right. You're doing this to me. The greedy landlord's not doing this to you. This is happening to everybody.
Right. So don't get mad. Don't get aggressive. Get the person to really understand that you love your business. And this place, this suite has been a part of my business for years now. And I anticipated this being a part of my business for many years. This is hurting me, maybe even on a personal level, more than it's hurting you, because I love walking in here every day and I can't now. But I want to come back in here. And if you can help me defer these over the next 3 months, I have no doubt that I want to come. I can't wait for me and my employees to come back in here. But right now I'm having a hard time.
And I am not above begging.
Yeah.
Beg if that's what it takes. Whatever it takes to save your business. This is what this is. This is not just trying to get one over on the landlord. I am trying to save my business here, because if I don't get this, I might not rehire anybody. I might not be able to reopen this business. That's not good for anybody.
Yeah. Now,
Mike, there were two key points that we made during the role play, and I want to make sure that the listeners remember that, because landlords will typically say to you exactly what Ty said to me. What about the government-funded programs? I don't know many people at all yet that have gotten any money yet. It probably will come, but it's probably 6 to 8 weeks away. And when that happens, and if you've applied and if you qualify, hopefully you can do that. The other big thing is the insurance. I want every tenant to recognize that every one of the landlords is an additional insured listed on that policy. They have the same copy of it that you do.
Tell me what you mean by that, because that part, when the PPP, I understood all that to the T.
Yep.
The insured part, I didn't really understand in the role play.
Sure. So let's say you're a tenant in a shopping center, and in your lease, it requires you to have insurance for fire and vandalism and broken windows and all that kind of stuff, and liability.
Breaks that ankle inside your space, whatever.
Yeah. So like a tenant in an apartment complex, or even if you've got homeowners insurance, right? The only difference is you own the home, the landlord owns the center. So landlords always want to be added to the policy, so that if someone slips and falls in my store, they're going to sue me, and they're also going to sue the landlord because they always have deeper pockets, right? You heard that story. Mm-hmm. So by adding the landlord as an additional insured on my policy, and there's no cost for that, if in fact the landlord gets sued, the same carrier takes care of the claim because it happened in my store. So they can't go sue yet a second party and get 2 different carriers and have 2 different claims.
So is that very, very common, or is it standard? Okay, so if I'm talking to one of my fitness studio clients, right, it's pretty likely, or it's done, that, hey, not only are you insured, but your landlord's insured for this as well. So when you say, Ty, when you were acting like the landlord, you said, hey, you have insurance, you can use your insurance. Rocco, you said, well, we both have insurance, right? We both
Yes.
have insurance for this.
Now, don't forget, I have insurance for my 1,800 square foot studio, right?
Right.
And my landlord is he's in an additional name on my policy. However, I don't have insurance for the whole center. If the whole center burns down, my insurance carrier is only going to take care of my interior space. Where it comes to the additional insured part, is mostly on liability. So that if someone sues me, they're certainly going to sue my landlord and my franchisor and whoever they can. But there'll be additional insured on that, and that'll overcome. So they can go in the file and take a look at the policy and say, hey, let's do this together. I'm happy to make the claim.
Yeah. And I've also heard, like, there's forgiven, which means, hey, it's done. But then there's forbearance, which means it's a type of deferring, right? But I've also seen that there's, and I don't know the exact definition of forbearance, but where it's like, hey, we're going to get these 3 months deferred, but then you owe it like on month 4, like all of it, or you owe it divided up over the next 3 months, you know?
Yeah, that's tough, as you know.
For our fitness clients, and again, giving different advice to different brands depending upon their financial wherewithal. So for our fitness brands that are closed, where they're not able to generate any revenue in most cases, what we're suggesting is that you do what we call either an abatement, where the landlord just says, like Publix did, we're abating rent. We're not going to ask you to pay us back. You just don't have to pay anything for April and May. Now, that's unusual. Publix, that's great that they're doing that. I've seen some other big brands, Irvine Companies has a similar program. That's not the norm. What I'm generally seeing is that landlords want to do deferments. And a deferment means you don't pay me now, you pay me later. The problem if you do a deferment that's paid back during the term of the lease is now that's an additional burden for you in some later month. It is most likely not going to happen where in July, I am not above begging.
Yeah.
Now that's an additional.
Hold on a second. I think we just.
I don't know what's going on there.
Hold on. There we go.
Sounds like me.
There we go. That was you. It went through. Okay, go ahead. Say that again.
So what I'm saying is that if you push that lease payment back to the end of the lease, now you've got a time where you're generating revenue in that period to pay rents in that period. What is going to be difficult is, let's say you've got a $5,000 rent and you push this $5,000 back, and now next July, you now have a $10,000 rent payment. I mean, it's not like you're going to work out that many more people next July.
Right,
so
right.
All of a sudden you're in trouble next July. So what we're trying to do is push that back. So rather than pay $10,000 in 1 month, you're paying $5,000 in a month that's not currently on the lease.
Now, a question I've got is, it seems like it's all kind of trickling, right? So, you know, let's say me as a fitness studio, I'm not making payments. I'm having a hard time making payments because no one's making payments to me, right? And so the government's helping me out with these different grants and programs that exist, right, to help me out. And much of it can be forgiven, right? If you play your cards correctly, if you do the right things.
You pay your employees.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. If you do it the right way, and you should be working with your accountant on it. We've released some episodes on that as well. You can get much of it possibly all of it forgiven as well. So, but what if the landlord, don't they have those options as well? Like, so at the end of the day, if I don't make those payments to them, can't they get some of their stuff forgiven as well? Like, doesn't it trickle up?
Yes and no, Mike. So a lot of landlords are funded in different ways. Some landlords get funding or financing for their shopping center from a typical lender, a bank. Some get it from the union pension fund. Some get it from an insurance company that needs to invest their money somewhere, their premium somewhere. So they're not likely to understand all of this like a typical lender will, and they have to get to them. But yes, to answer your question, they recognize that as well. So the larger lenders are saying, okay, if you've got to defer some rents, we're going to defer your payments as well. So let's take a look at it. Show me who you deferred, and we'll go ahead and defer that as well. Landlords are going to have to provide the same thing to their lender as they're kind of asking us to do to them, but you're going to get to the same place. But yeah, in most of the situations, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. And if they are a company with under 500 employees, they are eligible for PPP loans for them.
Yeah.
If they are over 500, again, that's a little bit of a no man's land. They're just working on a new program now in the Senate that I don't think has passed yet. But for those tweener companies, 500 employees up to the Boeings of the world who are getting money in a different way, it's a little bit of a no man's land right now, but they're working on programs for that.
So we do have a question from somebody in the audience, and they said, can landlords offer different options to tenants in the same strip? Meaning landlord forgives rent 3 months for one tenant, but then the neighbor gets deferment.
That is correct. Yes, they can do that. Just like your lease might be at $24 a foot and the restaurant next to you is paying $28 a foot because the landlord put more money into that space, or they signed it at a different time, or there was a different need. Yes, they can make different agreements. And in many cases, when I'm talking to landlords, they have asked me to sign non-disclosure agreements so that I don't share that information with my neighbor who's the Sport Clips, who doesn't want them to know that he gave me something that he didn't give to Sport Clips or vice versa.
Got it. Okay, cool. So for everyone watching, listening, what else should they know? Like if you guys weren't you and you were them, what would you want to know that you don't think we've talked about just yet?
Mike, the first thing I would recommend is that people pull their leases out after they signed it. They put it in a drawer. Get to know what's in there. Get to know your personal guarantee. Get to know the clauses that are in there. Get to know when the expiration date is. Get to know if you have any options you can sign and at what price those options are, so that when you're on the phone with the landlord and they're going to start negotiating or navigating through this, you'll know a lot more about your lease and you'll be knowledgeable about what you can or can't do. But I certainly wouldn't recommend that you start to negotiate to do anything more than you're currently committed to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I want to talk about the personal guarantee, because that's a scary one. And I'm pretty sure some of the people here have put on personal guarantees, right? It was a booming economy. Let's get it going. What could go wrong? And here we are. So if they do have a personal guarantee, does that limit their leverage in negotiation here?
Ty?
Yeah, without question. Again, we have not seen litigation as of yet. So look, this is going to be litigated just like the 9/11 was litigated for many years. And anytime you have a downturn, you're going to have things that come up. This is going to be unique. And there's going to be cases for a long time. But yes, if you have a personal guarantee, that does give your landlord that certain amount of leverage beyond what they would have otherwise. Okay. And again, that's why we say be prepared. Come in knowing what you're doing. This could be the most important conversation that you ever have with your business. So if you come in and you haven't prepared yourself and you get caught up, that's not going to be what you want to happen. So prepare yourself, understand what your lease is, have a conversation with somebody who coach you around. Maybe you do a little role play with somebody in your business to try and work through this yourself. Go into this very well prepared. You do not want to get caught up in this and you end up in an eviction court 3 months from now, and that's not what you were planning. So be prepared, come into this, and let those landlords know that this space is important to you and you're going to fight for it.
And also, I would recommend that you understand the real prize is getting through the conversation and getting something in the end that works for both parties. You're the tenant, not the landlord. The landlord has the contract. The landlord has the personal guarantee. So you can't get on the phone and start yelling and screaming and cursing and telling the guy what a bad guy is. That's going to end in a bad way. So if you remember to keep your eye on the prize is keep that door open and try to get across to the landlord that you really need their help and you would appreciate it so you could be a good tenant and we can get through this together. And I think when you do that, you'll be much more likely to get a positive result.
Rocco, if it was you that had a personal guarantee on it, obviously, like we said, your leverage is a little limited here. How would you work around that in the conversation? Like, what would you do?
Yeah. So I just did one, Mike. I'm a franchisee up in Pennsylvania. I've got 2 franchise stores. My partner runs the stores. On the 25th of March, we sent both of our landlords a letter stating that obviously we're going to be closing one store and keeping the other one open on a limited basis. And we wanted to make sure that we had the ability to speak with them. Here's both our cell numbers. And they both called me and said, look, we would like to get our rent abated. That's where we start. If they can't do that and we really kind of, do the best we can to get there, then we say we'd like to get it deferred. And if we can get it deferred, the one I just ended up doing was deferment for the next 2 years. So my rent will be abated in the amount of $12,000. So over the next 2 years, over the next 24 months, it's going to be $400 or $500 more per month. But I think I could afford that, and it's affordable. So back to the personal guarantee. I don't want to have to get to the point where they have to utilize that personal guarantee and go after my personal assets for something that happened kind of out of our control, out of everyone's control, out of the landlord's control as well. So I say, if you can abate this, I'm not asking you for anything free, but if you can either put it on the back end and give me 3 extra months, I'm happy to stay 3 extra months, or if we can work it out and spread it over the longest period of time so you have the ability to repay, because I think it's going to be a little bit of a slower start. We're not going to open tomorrow or whenever they turn the switch on to the economy and have the same identical revenue and membership base that we had when we closed. So I think that we're kidding ourselves there, but we're certainly going to get back there sooner or later. I just don't know when sooner or later is.
Right. Hey, here's somebody commented back with the deal they were able to work with their tenant. Let me know what you think of this deal. It sounds good. Definitely better than no deal, right? For sure. Yeah. It said for tenants they approved, the terms were deferred base rent for April and May. We pay CAM only. The deferred rent is to be paid back over 12 months starting September 1st with no interest.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, good.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is, that's a good deal. Security deposit. So some landlords will say, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we just use your security deposit? No harm to you, no harm to me. I don't want the tenant to forget that's their money. Now, it's okay if they have to do that and use the security deposit, but I don't know if the landlord's going to require you to replace that security deposit when you renew or at some point, but there is an option there. If it all else fails, ask them if you can use some portion of the security deposit to offset where you both are to get you through this.
Got it. Cool. Now I know my team's working with you, but we were working with you before this whole thing happened. So it wasn't like we went to you in the middle of it. Yeah. We were planning out some cool things. And the question I have is for people that are watching, listening, are they able to, I don't know what your capacity is right now. Are they able to work with you if it meant like, hey, I can't work a deal with my landlord. Can you help me? Do you do consults? Do you do anything like that?
Yeah, so we can consult with any of the tenants. We've done that for larger companies. We're doing one now for a company with 1,000 units. They just don't have the infrastructure to get to 1,000 units, so we put a team together for that. On a smaller basis, if you've got 1 unit or 5 units, certainly we can give you some templates that we've used in the past. Short of that, we would probably have to, charge some small fee to help, because as you can imagine, we can't read everyone's lease fully and stop what we're doing. But we've been trying to do that at the minimal cost we could to help everyone through this. We're just trying to say, hey, we're in real estate. We want to help everyone we can, as much as we can for free. And whatever we have to do to charge, that's fine. You can get a lawyer, but the problem is, if you do hire a lawyer, the landlord's going to probably send that to his lawyer. They don't want to talk to an attorney. So then you've just, escalated to 2 attorneys that have nothing better to do but charge a lot of money and have job security. So this process will be very long.
Right. So in this case, everybody here that's watching, listening, they can get a free consult with you, right? Yeah. And then if you needed to dig in because the advice you give in that console or templates that you give them for how to work this deal, if that's not enough, you need to dig in more, you'd be able to work with them. It's a small fee, but you can help them out.
Some people are just not good at being in a position where they have to ask for something, or they don't want to be in a position where there may be conflict. I understand that. And we don't either. We start out by telling them that, we're a real estate company that represents tenants. So tomorrow, when this is all over, I'm going to have to come to you, Mr. Landlord, and ask you if you'll take 2 or 3 or 4 of my tenants that would like to pay you for the next 10 years. So we're all in this together. So I don't want you to think we're bad people. We're just trying to get through this and represent the tenant. And based on the lease and based on what's going on, would this be acceptable to you? And if it is, it gets all of us through this and to the next phase. So yeah, we'd be happy to do that if they're uncomfortable or they're not comfortable reading the lease and understanding it.
Awesome. Now, really quick, before I ask for how they can reach out to you, Beth, the same person that worked that deal, said that it's a national REIT, if that helps. Yeah, what is that generally?
It's a real estate investment trust. So it's a trust fund that only invests in real estate. A lot of malls are owned by REITs.
Okay.
So they're in the real estate business. The people who manage those REITs, they've been through some tough things before, whether it's a mall with 50% vacancy or a brand new center that's been tough for the lease or all those kinds of things. So yeah, I mean, REITs are part of our world in real estate.
Got it. Cool. So how can everyone reach out to you?
So best thing to do is email Ty or myself. Ty's email is tbrewster, BREWSTER @KeyserCo, KeyserCo.com.
KEYSER.
CO.
Okay. .com.
.com. And my name is hard to spell, so it's easy to get hold of me. It's just rf@KeyserCo.com.
Okay. So I'm going to read these back before I hit enter and type it in here. So T Brewster, so T as in tennis, or as in Ty, and then Brewster, B-R.
Yeah, T Brewster, right?
Yeah, T Brewster. And then so TBREWSTER @Keyser, that's KEYSERCO.com, or RF as in Rocco Fiorentino @Keyser, same thing, KeyserCo.com, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Guys, for everybody watching, listening, everybody in the Facebook group, we're live right now. I just put that in the comments. You guys have that there. And for everybody that's listening to the podcast, you guys have that. Anybody watching this on YouTube, you can check it out in the details or the description of the YouTube video. We'll have that in there as well. Rocco, Ty, thanks so much. That was cool. The role play thing was cool. That was
Thank you, Mike. Awesome job.
We're also comfortable with them sharing it with their friends or others if they know somebody else. A lot of local business people are in these local groups. And again, we can provide any support for anybody. We really understand the situation everyone's in, and we just want to be here to provide help. I mean, we understand this is a very dire time.
Love it. Love it. Guys, you're the best. That was great.
Thanks, Mike. We appreciate it, buddy. Anytime.
Same here. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. See you now.